Chaitanya Manovishnam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tatati Swapadantikam Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So good morning to all of you.
Good morning, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Nice to have your association today. And this is a relatively easy chapter. It's really making two major points. The main point, of course, is in the title of the chapter. That devotional service surpasses all liberation. And then at the end of the chapter, it gets into a very wonderful brief discussion about Vrindavan and how Vraj Bhakti, or Bhakti to Krishna, following in the footsteps of the Brijbasis, is the highest form of devotional service. And that's especially good for you all, because you all are living in South India. In South India, there's a lot of Sri Vaishnavas. There's a lot of people who kind of feel that the highest form is Narayan, or the four-armed form of the Lord. And so it might have been very interesting for some of you. Maybe some of you were Sri Vaishnavas before, and then to read the teachings of the Goswamis, the teaching of the Bhagavatam, which isn't as emphasized in the Sri Sampradaya as it is in our Sampradaya. It might have been a bit of an adjustment for some of us. But Jiva Goswami, especially in his Sandarbhas, is so systematic in explaining this. And of course, we have great respect for other Vaishnavas. It's not like people who worship the four-armed form of the Lord are going to hell or something. It's not like that. They're devotees. And Lord Chaitanya had some very interesting discussions with the Tattvavadis in South India, things like that. So, are we ready?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, very good. So let's. And what basically this whole chapter is making those 2 points, and then giving all kinds of evidence. That's it. All kinds of evidence especially from the Bhagavatam, but from other Shastra as well, to substantiate this point that I just made, the 2 points. So the very first paragraph, there's the first reference is from the 4th canto about King Prithu, and it says that he prays to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, "My dear Lord, if after taking liberation, I have no chance of hearing the glories of your Lordship, glories chanted by the pure devotees from the core of their hearts in praise of your lotus feet, then if I have no chance for this honey of transcendental bliss, then I shall never ask for liberation or this so-called spiritual emancipation." So many people are looking for mukti, right? Dharma, artha, kama, moksha, right? That's what, get out of this material, out of this suffering. And they often have an impersonal concept of that. And here, Prithu Maharaj said, I don't ever want liberation if it means that I can't practice bhakti. So bhakti is so, it's an ocean compared to the water that's found in the hoof print of a calf after a rain. It's like no comparison at all. And we talked about that a few chapters ago, where of the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service, 3 are about happiness. One is that it's greater happiness than sense gratification. One is it's greater happiness than liberation. And the one on prema is that no other happiness can even enter. So Prabhupada discusses this in the 2nd paragraph. He says, the impersonalists desire to merge into the existence of the Supreme, But without keeping their individuality, they have no chance of hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord. Because they have no idea of the transcendental form of the Supreme Lord, there's no chance of their chanting and hearing of his transcendental activities. In other words, unless one is already beyond liberation, one cannot relish the transcendental glories of the Lord, nor can one understand the transcendental form of the Lord. So why would you get into praising someone and wanting to hear about them if you want to merge into them? You are that person. So why, like that. And it's interesting because I think you also have experience, all of you probably living in India, that, in person, Mayavadis can be very good at quoting, Krishna's Rasa dance, or, some discussion between Yudhisthira and Bhishma, right? You hear it. So it takes a little subtlety. I was once in Vrindavan at I couldn't understand it so much. It was in Hindi. I could understand some. It was in Hindi. But I was sitting next to a devotee. And the person speaking was a Paka Mayavadi. But he's quoting Rupa Goswami, quoting Sanatana Goswami. But then at the end, kicking them away, basically. But devotees, they have a totally different, it's not just a cute story to teach some kind of moral instruction, which you sometimes see with Mayavadis or people who have a big YouTube following or something like that, but devotees relish here it says we can relish the transcendental glories of the Lord and understand that Krishna has a transcendental form which is eternal. Okay. Any questions, comments so far about this point?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Many times we hear that our ultimate goal of life is to attain the lotus feet of go back home, back to Godhead. Many times we hear that pretty much in almost every lecture of ISKCON. So I think, is that a sort of a carrot dangling in front of us? But eventually our purification should be so much that we focus only on devotional service and not getting liberated to the spiritual planets.
That's a very good question. Excellent question. Yes. I don't think it's a carrot. Maybe it is a carrot, but the way to do it, as you're so nicely are saying, is by doing selfless service, right? Yeah, I think that's. So there's a nice, and also, yes, it depends on our level of advancement. So I may have told you this story already, but one time Burijan Prabhu was talking to Srila Prabhupada, and he was a young devotee at the time. So in his kind of youthful enthusiasm, he said, Srila Prabhupada, we don't want to go back to Godhead. We want to just serve you and your mission life after life. And Prabhupada looked at him sternly and said, do not make me come back to save you. In other words, he realized, although that's a very wonderful sentiment, and it's what Lord Chaitanya says in the fourth Shashastakam verse, Mama Jamani Jamani Ishwari Bhavatad Bhakti Rahaitu Kichya. Birth after birth, I don't mind, as long as Bhavatad Bhakti. But it may not be our realization yet. Now there's more to be said about this, Prabhuji, Achyuta Padaravinda Prabhu. If we're just saying, kind of generically going back home, back to Godhead, okay, so I see your point. But if we're thinking going back to Vrindavan to please Krishna, to serve Krishna, to exchange deep, loving relationships. So it's not just to get out of suffering, but it's in a mood of, I want to go to that place where I can be constantly engaged in service. Then that's not a carrot. Well, it's a carrot in one sense, but it's a carrot that is anya. If you remember the verse from the first lesson, anya bilashita sunyam. jnana karma anavritam anukuyena Krishnamya. Is that all right?
Yes, Prabhu.
So so we need to know what is going back to that head.
Correct.
It means serving Krishna, giving pleasure to Krishna.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, but please, speak up if you have them. Let us continue. So next paragraph is the reference to Sukadeva Goswami talking to Maharaj Parikshit about King Bharat. He said the great soul, King Bharat, was so much attached to the service of the lotus feet of Krishna that he very easily gave up his lordship over the earthly planet and his affection for his children, society, friends, royal opulence, and beautiful life. So that's one example. In this example, it's giving up worldly things in this life, right? Your children, society, friends, seeing those sources of pleasure as insignificant compared to the nectar of serving Krishna. Okay. Then in the next reference, the 6th canto, 11th chapter about Vritrasura, he says, my dear Lord, by leaving your transcendental service, I may be promoted to the planet called Dhruvaloka, pole star, where I may gain lordship over all the planetary systems of the universe, but I do not aspire for this, nor do I wish the mystic perfections of yoga practice, nor do I aspire to spiritual emancipation, which is what we were just talking about. All I wish for, my Lord, is your association and transcendental service eternally. So the previous reference was about enjoyment in this world, and the next, what we just read, is even higher heavenly planets, or getting mystic perfection. The devotee doesn't even want those things when they're tasting pure devotional service. Okay, and this is even confirmed again in the famous verse, Narayana parasarve nakutas chanya vidyati swarga pavarga narakeshu apitu yarta darshan, which is this Lord Shiva in the Srimad Bhagavatam 6, 17, 28. And he says that devotees are not afraid of anything if they are elevated to the higher planetary systems, or if they get liberation, or from material contamination, or if they're pushed out to the hellish condition of life, or in fact, any situation, whatever, they are not afraid of anything, simply because they have taken shelter of the lotus feet of Narayan. For them, any position in the material world is as good as another. And this was spoken by Lord Shiva to Parvati Sati after she cursed Chitraketu to become a demon in his next life. And he didn't, when we get bad news, our mind can't stop thinking about the bad news, right? We may even take shelter of some bad habit or this or that. But Chitraketu, he just came down from his airplane, paid obeisances to Mother Parvati. My dear mother, what you have done is under the control of the Lord. Thank you. And he didn't mind at all, as long as he could do devotional service. So it's really a practical example for us. We may not get the news that we're going to become a demon in our next life, but we get all kinds of news, right? We may lose our job or not get that promotion, or our car needs 2 lakhs worth of repair, or whatever it is. And can we react like Chitraketu did? That's not easy. And the good news is that even if you fail, Krishna will give you more opportunities to succeed until we get it right. But it's a hard one. It's not to immediately see Krishna's hands in things and to see it as our karma. All these things It's not easy, but that's why Prabhupada would quote this verse so often in the sixth canto, glorifying Chitraketu Maharaj by Lord Shiva. Very important verse. Amal Set says, I have few questions. Well, let's take one at a time. Prithvi Maharaj is saying that he doesn't want liberation, as I can't relish Krishna service, cannot get devotional service. Then human form of life is blessing to relish this transcendental form of Krishna. So Krishna was merciful enough to provide so much avenue for us to relish this taste. I don't see the question there in number one. Let me continue. Dhruva Loka, pure devotee, is given chance to move to that Loka. It means that we can not relish the transcendental form in Dhruva Loka, but Dhruva Maharaj requested that keep me engaged in your service. So it is not clear. Can you please help me understand this? Well, Dhruva Loka, the North Star, sometimes it's said. I think it's primarily just trying to let's see what it says here. Well, we could actually go to that verse. I'll show it to you on my screen so you can see it. This is the verse I was referring to. Oh my Lord, source of all opportunities, I do not desire to enjoy in Dhruva Loka, the heavenly planets, or the planets where Lord Brahma resides. Nor do I want to be the supreme ruler of all the earthly planets or the lower planetary systems. I do not desire to be the master of the powers, mystic yoga, nor do I want liberation if I have to give up your lotus feet. So he's not saying he doesn't want to go to Dhruva Loka, which, yes, is considered a spiritual planet in the material world. But he doesn't want to go there if he has to give up seva. I mean, so in other words, he doesn't want the desire to enjoy. If he was, yes, going there for service, yeah, no problem. But that Prabhupada's wording here is very helpful. Or actually, this is so I don't desire to enjoy in Dhruva Loka. I might want to go to serve there, but I don't want to go there if I have to give up Krishna's service. So the point is not specifically about Dhruva Loka per se, but it's about the glories of devotional service and the power of devotional service. Now, I'm not sure I understand the first question. Dhruva Maharaj is saying that he don't want liberation, as I cannot relish the Krishna's service, cannot get devotional service. Then human form of life is blessing to relish this transcendental form of Krishna. So Krishna was merciful enough to provide so much avenue for us to relish his taste. Well, that's true. The human form of life, just 500 years after Lord Chaitanya appeared, is a great blessing. Yes, and so we also have to understand liberation, right? Because it's used, the English word, and even the Sanskrit word mukti, it's used in, oops, somebody just went off of mute. Somebody's not on mute. Okay, now they are. And they said, yes, Bhakti Shastri class is going on. So we always have to know there's certain words that we really need to know the context of, right? So the context of here is liberation, where it means kind of impersonal liberation, or, maybe it's freedom from birth, death, disease, and old age, but it's not engagement in bhakti. And probably some of us know that story in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was a Paka impersonalist. He became a devotee. And there's a famous verse in the 10th canto, 14th chapter, verse 8. Tatenu kampam sukshamikshamano punjani evatmatitam vipakam vidvagva purbir vidinam namaste jiveti yo mukti pade sadayabha. And so he crossed out mukti and he put bhakti pade after he became a devotee. And Lord Chaitanya appreciated the sentiment, but he said, no, in this, and he said, in this context, mukti pate means bhakti. So we just have to know the context. But here in this chapter, we're putting that liberation, which is not part of devotional service. Okay, so I hope I answered your question, Amal.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you. It was very clear now.
My pleasure. At your service. Anything else before we continue?
No, Prabhu.
Okay.
I think it was very clear. It was more that he don't want to enjoy that unless there is a service part to the Krishna.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
Yes. Exactly. So then there's more examples. Indra is speaking to Mother Diti, persons who have given up all kinds of desires and are simply engaged in devotional service to the Lord, know what is actually their self-interest. Such persons are actually serving their self-interest and are considered first-class experts in advancing, in the matter of advancing to the perfectional stage of life. So then in the next one, I'll just read part of it from the Bhagavatam, 6th chapter, verse 25. By this statement, Prabhupada writes, of Prahlad Maharaj, it is clearly understood that one who takes pleasure in chanting and hearing the transcendental glories of the Lord has already surpassed all kinds of material benedictions, including the results of pious fruitive activities, sacrifices, and even liberation from material bondage. So bhakti is it's independent and it's in a category all of its own. And then there's the reference from the 7th canto, 8th chapter, verse 42. And I'll just read the last 3 sentences. Devotees do not care even for liberation, what to speak of these material opulences. Actually, we are not enjoyers of the fruits of sacrifice. Our only duty is to always be engaged in your service, for you are the enjoyer of everything. So again and again, do devotional service, do devotional service. It far surpasses the pleasure of liberation. Or you could say you automatically get liberated by doing devotional service. And then very next sentences, the purport of this statement by Indra is that beginning from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, no living entities are meant for enjoying the material opulences. They are simply meant for offering everything to the supreme proprietor, the person who owns everything. So although it's kind of like offering Ganges water to the Ganges, or Ganga Jal to Mother Ganga, because Krishna owns everything. Krishna appreciates when we offer things to him with love. Patram, pushpam, phalam toyam. Earth, not earth, water, fire, air. You know, one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, water, some small thing. Krishna is pleased. So I think we're getting the message, right? Bhakti, bhakti, bhakti. People sometimes think, no, performing austerities, understanding you're not this body, studying Sanskrit. No. Those are the best things, but that's not what Rupa Goswami is saying here. No, it's the devotion that really powers everything else. Yes?
Varada Krishna Prabhu has put up his hand.
Oh, I didn't see. Yes, Varada Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, please accept my most humble obeisances. My question may appear a little naive, but what is the destination of somebody who gets liberation? And in simple, easily understandable terms, what is it? Because there's a whole spectrum of understandings that get parked under the shelter, under the umbrella of the word liberation. Whole spectrum of understandings. I mean, for that matter, even the Mayavadis use this word very frequently. So, are we Is there a difference between the Vaishnava understanding of the word liberation and the Mayavada understanding of the word liberation?
Well, again, depending on how we're defining liberation, but it's not too different. It is the idea of not being affected by the three modes of material nature. Mam chayo avicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatitaitam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. The Brahman platform is one free from the influence of rajas, tamas, and even sattva. And it usually includes some kind of, if you're really paka mayavadi, right, or impersonalist, merging into the Brahman effulgence. So it does mean losing one's identity. One time very early in ISKCON, 1968 or maybe 69, Prabhupada's, most of his books were not out. We're so spoiled now. We just, we have whole sets of Prabhupada's books everywhere we go, and even on our phones. But there was a time when he had only, started translating, and we had the first 3 volumes of the Bhagavatam. So a devotee was giving class in New Vrindavan, and Prabhupada was not in the class, but he was upstairs. It was like a loft, and he was listening to the class. And it was a lot of the class about impersonalism. And at the end, all the devotees, they're having some argument about, some of the devotees had different opinions. So they went to see Prabhupada afterwards. And he said to the class giver, so they have asked you the question, meaning, the question about Mayavads. And so a devotee asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, do all Mayavadis have to fall down? Right? Because there's this verse that we're very familiar with, Arura Kritrena Param Papam Tata. That means that, one comes down again to the material platform. Prabhupada would sometimes joke, come down to get again to like open up hospitals or do some kind of mundane welfare activity. And Prabhupada thought, do all Mayavadis have to fall down to all impersonals? And he says, what is he going to say to these brand new devotees who don't know practically anything? He said, yes, because they get lonely. I've often thought that great realization, a great teacher doesn't like just, teach something way over the heads of some of the students just so he can impress them. But a great teacher can explain even very lofty philosophical points to someone who's illiterate or to a child. So these were very young devotees, and he just worded it so nicely. Yes, because they get lonely. Because if you've merged with the Brahman effulgence, there's no one to talk to, basically. So now, if they were to somehow or other, before merging or after coming down again, get the association of a devotee, then then they have the opportunity to understand what real liberation is. Muktir hitvayatpa rupam swarupena vyavastati. And Prabhupada would quote that verse in the Bhagavatam a lot also, which basically means that our real identity is Krishna Das and not impersonal liberation. So that's probably about the best I can do, Radha Krishna Prabhu. Is that all right? Did you want to?
So can we conclude that when we refer to liberation, it necessarily means the Mayavadi type of liberation, or
the well, really impersonal is better, right?
Okay.
Then Mayavadi means they're offenders. Impersonal is just,
I agree.
Yeah, impersonal. They accept Krishna, but they just somehow or other are more attracted to the impersonal. Yeah. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Bus. Okay. Any other question or comment? So Prabhu's, I just need to do one thing. Give me 2 minutes, okay? I will be back. Don't go away. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Vardha Krishna Prabhu,
Yeah, Mataji.
can you explain what Prabhu just said? The difference between impersonalists and Mayavadis?
Oh, really? Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yatrupatam aham vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhum Shri Chaitanyeshwar. So impersonalist is the, like there is this famous verse that realization of God happens in 3 stages. There is the Brahman realization, there is the Paramatma realization, and there is the Bhagavan realization. So an impersonalist, as different from being a Mayavadi, an impersonalist accepts that Brahman is the outer effulgence of the body of the Lord. So in other words, I'm sorry, it just came.
No, please continue, Prabhu. Please continue.
So the effulgence of the form of the Lord. And then they fully understand and recognize that the 3 phases are Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan realization. So there is an intrinsic acceptance of the existence of Krishna as a personality built into the impersonalist thought process. This is quite different from that of a Mayavadi. For Mayavadi, there is Brahman and Brahman alone. And Krishna is also as much a product of Brahman as you and I are, as much a product of Brahman as you and I are. So there is no separate, distinct position, neither for Krishna nor for you. We're all one and the same products of Brahman. And when we say products of Brahman, we say products because we perceive a difference between me and Krishna and you and because of ignorance. So when ignorance is removed, there are no 2 entities, or there's no multiplicity of entity, or there's no variety nor variegatedness. It's all one. Everything is Maya, product of Maya. In other words, product of ignorance or Maya. We use the word Maya, ignorance interchangeably. So a Maya Vadi is one who believes that basically everything is one supreme absolute Brahman, and perception of multiplicity or variegatedness is because of ignorance or Maya. So there is nothing other than neti, nothing other than the Brahman that exists. This is characteristically very different from the Brahman understanding of an impersonalist who accepts, to some degree at least, the presence of Krishna as a supreme personality, and accepts Brahman as the, shall I say, like I said, the outer effulgence of the Lord. So it's very different. Hare Krishna.
Very nicely said, Prabhu.
Thank you,
Why
Prabhu. So can I just
Go ahead.
follow? So the offense that the Mayavadis commit is that they think there is no separate entity called Krishna. Is that the offense?
Prabhu, it's yours.
Well, you're doing so well. Well, Prabhupada would sometimes say that it's such an insult to Krishna, because you're basically saying that Krishna is deaf, he's blind, he's dumb, he has no personality. It is so painful for a pure devotee to hear that. I think I told you the story about Prabhupada in Japan, didn't I? Where the Mayavadi sannyasi was speaking, giving class, right?
Yes.
You did.
Prabhupada was
Yeah.
sitting on a high.
And at one time, he just couldn't take it anymore. And he said, stop him. So that's and therefore, Lord Chaitanya would say, Mayavadi Krishna aparade, and that a Mayavadi is like a walking offense against Krishna for that reason. Would you, Vardha Krishna, would you like to add to that?
Well, the thing is that at one level, the offense is a total negation of the presence of Lord Krishna as a supreme personality. That's one level of offense. The second level of offense is also to say that even if there's someone called Krishna, he's as much a product of Maya as you and I are. And to equate Krishna with all of us. So they say, the Mayavadis say, he's doing his Leela, I'm doing mine.
Yes.
So that's a very derogatory, actually sacrilegious approach towards Krishna. And it hits at the very basic foundation of Vaishnava thought process as being the servant of Krishna, who is the Supreme Lord, the Creator. And Mayavadis have the audacity also to say that we can merge with Krishna, or I can become Krishna, or because somewhere deep in their heart, they like what Krishna is doing. So,
yes.
So we can merge with Krishna and we can become one with Krishna and then enjoy as much as he seems to be enjoying. So at all levels, Mayavada thought is an offense to Krishna. And it's a great affront to the Vaishnava understanding that we are servants.
So nicely said, Prabhu. Yes,
No,
it's
Prabhu.
it's like no, yes, it's like, you know, we may have a big desire. You know, we want a Mercedes Benz or a Rolls Royce or a you know, a huge house, a huge bungalow or whatever. Or we may have even a bigger desire that in our next life we, you know, are elevated to Brahmaloka or you know, Tapaloka, you know, some higher planet. But the Mayavadis have a much bigger material desire, right? They have much bigger. They want to be God. They want to. So it's so in some ways it's big sense gratification, because big sense gratification. Yes. So thank you very much for that beautiful explanation, Bharata Krishna Prabhu. There's a question here. Among Mayavadis and Shunyavadis, who is comparatively better and more eligible to accept Krishna consciousness? Well, can you please enlighten about Shunyavadis in this context? Well, one thing, Murari Madhava Prabhu, is everything doesn't have to be a comparison or a competition. They're both bad. That's the first thing. And you know, now I'm offended because I'm only joking with you, Murari Madhava Prabhu. But my point is, we should know the answer to this question from the previous chapters. And that was that we studied how the adhikar for the taking up bhakti, ultimately it comes from being fortunate enough to get the association of a devotee. And that's how bhakti begins, by that, by the blessings, the mercy of a devotee. And you know, if any of us were not born into ISKCON here on this call, then we remember that first person who very kindly gave us a book or told us that, oh, you should go visit the temple, it's very nice. Or, you know, we met them, you know, at some place, and they started telling us about Krishna. We're so fortunate to have gotten that devotees association. Even if they're not, like the person who introduced me to Krishna consciousness ended up never practicing Krishna consciousness. But still he was kind enough to introduce me. So then we had the 3 levels of adhikar, the Kanishta, the Madhyama, and the Uttama. We studied that as well. So, and we say 20 times a day, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi, Paschatya Deshatarine, right? So Prabhupada came to get rid of both of them, or both of those mentalities. I don't really want to get into the comparison. Maybe, I don't know. Is it worse to say someone is deaf, dumb, useless or to say that they don't exist. You know what I mean? It's like we'd rather not adopt either of them, Nirvishesha Vad or Sunya Vad. You know, either zero like Buddhism, there is no God, or the Mayavad conception. Unless Varda Krishna, you're expert on these things.
No,
Do you have any?
I'm not really expert, but just want to add a postscript to what you just said. The
Please.
thing about Shunyavadis and the difference between, fundamental difference between Shunyavadis and Mayavadis is that on the surface of it, both of them seem to be heading towards the same definition of creation. So but the Mayavadis very cleverly use the Vedic scriptures to support their conclusions.
Correct.
Whereas the Shunyavadis reject the Vedic scriptures also. They come to the same conclusion by just some mental construction and or whatever disintegrating this creation into various components, and until they finally bring it down to this component of desire. Everything is a product of desire. If desire is not there, if you're desireless, then it's shunya. So they completely reject. They don't use. But the Mayavadis are, even at that level, they're very, what can I say? They're very devious in the sense that they misinterpret, they defile the Vedic scriptures to extract this conclusion of Mayavada, oneness, etc. But at least in that sense, you could say the Shunyavad is a little decent because they reject it altogether. They don't squeeze out this meaning like the Mayavadis do, which is why Lord Chaitanya, in one sense, you could say, Shankaracharya wanted to debunk the whole thing about Shunyavadi, saying, at least let's bring back the authority of the Vedas in human society at that point of time. And then doesn't matter, let's for some time, let's continue to accept the conclusions of the Shunyavadis, but let's bring back the authority of the Vedas. Historically, that's the difference.
Right, very good, very, very nice. Yes. And you know, it's kind of the next point from there's no offense at all, Murari Madhav. We're just joking with you. Yes, they quote those things, and it's very similar to that story that I told, that Prabhupada for the first 20 minutes let the Mayavadi go on. He said, no, he was quoting, you're not this body. He was, you know, introducing what we would call Gyan, right? Like the chapter 2, verse 11 to 30 of the Bhagavad Gita. Dehino shmin yata dehe komanam yovaram jara, that, you know, najayate mariyate vahakadachin, etc. So they get the Gyan part that we also study, and they get that right. You know, we're not this bodies, we're the soul. Material world is a place of suffering. The threefold miseries are there. The three modes of material nature are there. But then their solution, or you know, is not right. And that's when Prabhupada interrupted him. So it can be tricky because hey, I heard my Guru Maharaj quote that verse, that shloka, and I also heard, you know, Swami Nikhilananda quote that shloka. So it could seem like the same. And I think as Varda Krishna, they can be almost very camouflaged the way some Mayavadis are. But in their heart, they're crippled. Yeah. So there are references in the Upanishad that we can both quote. There's also ones in the Upanishad that are interpreted very differently. Like let me get an example of that from the beginning of the Sri Ishopanishad. Here we go. Let's see. which one am I looking for? Oh yeah, like for example, mantra 5. The Supreme Lord walks and does not walk. He is far away and he is very near as well. He is within everything and yet he is outside of everything. That definitely can be interpreted in a Mayavadi way, right? That's just one example of many. So that's why we have to associate with devotees, hear the commentaries of the pure devotees, and focus primarily on the Bhakti Shastris, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Nectar of Devotion. Okay, let us carry on. Just got to go back to where I was. Okay, where was I? Prabhupada writes in the next paragraph, from the 8th canto, chapter 3, verse 20. Oh, did I read that? Well, it's Gajendra, but I know that persons who are pure devotees and have, by serving the lotus feet of great souls, that's an interesting instruction to us, become freed from all material desires, are always merged in the ocean of transcendental bliss, and as such, are always satisfied simply by glorifying your auspicious characteristics. For them, there is nothing else to aspire to or pray for. They just want bhakti. And then in the next, skipping one paragraph and going on to the one with the Nagapatnis, are the wives of Kaliya are speaking. And they say at the end, they say, in other words, anyone who adores the dust of your lotus feet does not care a fig for all other perfectional stages. And then Prabhupada writes the next one, and there's a similar statement in the 10th canto, 87th chapter, verse 21, wherein the Shrutis, the Vedas personified, pray to the Lord as follows. Dear Lord, it is very difficult to understand spiritual knowledge. And so here, this is not, here that's referring to like Gyan, right? What we were talking about before, not knowledge of, what's the markings on Srimati Radharani's lotus feet. This is a different level of Gyan. This is kind of the impersonal, you're not this body Gyan, spiritual knowledge. Your appearance here, just as you are, is to explain to us this most difficult subject matter of the spirit. As such, your devotees who have left their domestic comforts to associate with the liberated acharyas are now fully merged in the devotional service of your lordship. And thus they do not care for any so-called liberation. Just just the idea, I'm not this body, I shouldn't enjoy this world. They don't want to have anything to do with that. They want to have like, Hare Krishna, Krishna's lotus, Krishna is so wonderful. Did you hear the past time when Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill like that? That's what they want to relish, so real personal things. And then continuing, in explaining this verse, it should be noted that spiritual knowledge means understanding the self and the super soul or super self. The individual soul and the super soul are qualitatively one, and therefore both of them are known as Brahman or spirit. But knowledge of Brahman is very difficult to understand. And Krishna says this in the 5th verse of the 12th chapter of the Gita. Klesho dikataras tesham. He says that impersonal realization is very difficult. It's very difficult. Let's see if we can show you that verse real quick. It's a very beautiful verse, actually. Klesho dikataras tesham avyakta shakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukam dehavabhir avavyate. In those whose minds are attached to the unmanifest, impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. And Prabhupada writes, the individual soul right here is embodied since time immemorial. It is very difficult for him to simply theoretically understand that he's not this body. Because that's, for some of us, it's still like a theory, right? We haven't fully realized it. Therefore, the bhakti yogi accepts the deity of Krishna as worshipable because there is some bodily conception fixed in the mind which can thus be applied. Of course, worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his form within the temple is not idol worship. So, important point there. Okay. And then Prabhupada quotes from the, well, Rupa Goswami quotes from the 11th canto, 20th chapter, 14th chapter, about same theme, so we'll skip over that. And then there's a description, there's two big long paragraphs about the Damodar Lila. And in that, Rupa Goswami quotes two of the Damodar Astakam verses. And let's see, I thought I had opened up the Damodar Astakam verses, but maybe I didn't. Well, I can just open up another one. He quotes the 4th and 7th verse of the Damodar Astakam. Okay, 1 second. So I can show you this. So he quotes this, I hope you can see that, number 4. Varam deva moksham na moksha vadinva, that one. Oh Lord, although you are able to give all kinds of benedictions, I do not pray to you for liberation. There it is. Or, nor eternal life in Vaikuntha. Don't even want to go back to Godhead, basically like Achyuta Prabhu was asking. Nor any other boon. My only prayer is that your childhood pastimes be may constantly appear in my mind. Oh Lord, I do not even want to know your feature of Paramatma. I simply wish that your childhood pastimes may ever be enacted in my heart. And then he also quotes the 7th verse. O Lord Damodar, in your form as a baby, Mother Jashoda bound you to a grinding stone with a rope for tying cows. You then freed the sons of Kubera, Manigriva and Nala Kubera, who were cursed to stand as trees, and you gave them the chance to become your devotees. Please bless me in the same way. There it is again, I have no desire for liberation into your effulgence. So again, the same point being made again and again and again. So Prabhupada goes into some lengthy description here about that pastime, actually for 2 paragraphs. But that's the essence of what we just, no desire from, just in-person liberation, just devotional service. And then skipping ahead a bit, I'll see if there's any questions or comments at this point. Or is there something in the chat? Let's see.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, this whole chapter, as I understood, it talks about, there are so many instances where all the kings, emperors, and other devotees completely have no desires for material enjoyment or material benefits, and even not seeking liberation. That means they are only into devotion to Lord.
Yes,
Prabhu, I am quite amazed about one thing, and compare only myself and want to ask the question. such a great emperors like Bharat Maharaj or Prithu Maharaj or Ambarish Maharaj, they were all ruling huge nations. But still, they had they were so humble and devoted themselves only to worshipping Lord Krishna. And they simply threw all these empires just for the sake of rendering service to Krishna at one point of time or other. Like Bharat Maharaja or Nabi Maharaj, all those people, they threw their empire just to focus only on Krishna and serve Krishna.
Yes.
But in contrast to Prabhu, I am only comparing, I am not trying to hurt anybody's feeling. Let me quote myself. I was in a very, a middle management category in my erstwhile period before I retired. So by virtue of which, even managing directors contacted me, and I was in charge of budgeting, so many things. So I was constantly in the limelight. And today I am rendering my service in ISKCON Temple, Bangalore, under Bharatkrishna Prabhu. So Bharatkrishna Prabhu sometimes consults me on many financial matters. Bureau officials contact me on many taxation financial matters. So all these things, Prabhu, do they give me a sense of ego in my mind that I am unable to be a true devotee? Or also, are there many people like me, even in this Bhakti Shastri close, who are head of the departments, who are heading huge organizations, who are huge departments, who by virtue of their powers and position have a little bit of ego? But all these things, will it affect them also to become a true devotee? And I am unable to enjoy the bliss of serving the Krishna Prabhu. If so, what I should do to get rid of this ego from me completely, Prabhu, so that I will render a flawless, selfless service to Lord Prabhu. This I wanted to.
Well, it's very, very nice that you're doing service. When Bharata Krishna Prabhu asks you, or some devotees from the bureau, whatever, that's very nice. Mahat Sevam Dwaram Ahur Vimuktes. That when we serve great devotees, the gates to the spiritual world open up to us. So that's nice, and you should please continue, and if you can, even increase. You can work on your heart, and maybe sometimes some small subtle desires may be there. When Lord Chaitanya cleaned the Gundicha temple, he cleaned it twice. One time he did a general cleaning, and then afterwards he got into the very, very little, like the dust in between a little crack in the floor or something like that, and cleaned that out. So you're doing the general thing wonderfully, all this nice service and tax advice and everything, and getting the association of advanced devotees. It's really great fortune that you're doing this in your retirement. Still, you can be a little introspective sometimes and say, Krishna, please, you pray to Krishna, please, I only want to do this to serve the devotees. I don't do this for name, for fame, for distinction, for honor. I just want to do humble service. This is the greatest benediction. And it may take some work, but Krishna will gradually fulfill that desire that we just want to serve him. But it's natural to have a little kitchery, a little mixture right now, but we really can do that more subtle cleaning of our heart. Is that all right, Prabhu?
True, Prabhu.
Good luck. We pray that Krishna will give you all blessings to become 100% pure.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
All right, so now Sarva Pavana Prabhu and Abhay, I'm assuming Mataji is saying, I guess this is a quote from Prabhupada, Morning Walk. Shunyavadi, they say, there is no God and there is nothing. Fact. Everything is combination of some illusory things. This is Shunyavadi. And the Mayavadi, they say, yes, there is God, but he has no form. Therefore, we have to kill both of them. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane. The whole Western world are filled with these Sunyavadi and impersonals. India is also nowadays. But there are devotees in the Acharya Sampradaya. They are fighting against Sunyavadi and Nirvishesha. Yeah, so Prabhupada seemed to, be an equal opportunity chastiser of both Nirvishesha and Shunyavadi. And then more, this is a conversation with Madhavisa Prabhu and Trivikram Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. Madhavisa, what is the difference between an impersonalist and a Mayavadi? Prabhupada, very little difference, but still there is difference. Trivikram, Mayavadis are offenders. Prabhupada, Mayavadi means they are speaking that everything is Maya, Krishna is also Maya. And impersonalist means they are thinking to merge into the Brahman effulgence is better than to keep our personal identity. Right? But they're not offenders. At least that's one definition. So thank you very much, Sarvabhavana Prabhu, for that. Okay, anything else before we continue? All right. So then Rupa Goswami quotes the famous Atmaram verse, which is 1:17:10. In this Atmaram verse, it is stated that even those who are completely liberated from material contamination are attracted by the transcendental qualities of Lord Krishna. And then I really like the next, these two words, irresistibly attracted. Prabhupada writes, the purport of this verse is that a liberated soul has absolutely no desire at all for material enjoyment, but he is wholly freed from all kinds of material desires, yet still he is irresistibly attracted by the desire to hear and understand the pastimes of the Lord. Irresistibly attracted. Wouldn't it be nice if we were irresistibly attracted to Krishna? That's what we should hope for. Then Rupa Goswami quotes about the 5 different kinds of liberation. From the above statement, it is found that a devotee is not after any of the stages of liberation. There are 5 stages of liberation, already explained as being 1, to become one with the Lord. 2, I lost my space. To live in the same planet as the Lord. 3, to obtain the same bodily features of the Lord as the Lord. 4, to have the same opulences as the Lord. And 5, to have constant association with the Lord. Out of these 5 liberated stages, the one which is known as Sayuja, or to merge into the existence of the Lord, is the last to be accepted by a devotee. The other 4 liberations, although not desired by devotees, still are not against the devotional ideals. Some of the liberated souls who have achieved these 4 stages of liberation, this is very interesting, may also develop affection for Krishna and be promoted to, so they go from Narayan worship to Krishna worship and be promoted to Goloka Vrindavan, planets in the spiritual world, sky. In other words, those who are already promoted to the Vaikuntha planets and who possess the 4 kinds of liberation may also sometimes develop affection for Krishna and be promoted to Krishna Loka. So yes, the devotee doesn't say, oh, Krishna, I really want to be on the same planet as you. I really wanted the same bodily features. I really wanted the same opulence. No, they don't think like that. They think, I just want to serve, but if I get those things, what to do? It's not my desire, but if they come, that may happen. Okay. So any comments, questions on these 5 kinds of liberation?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, Krishna Loka and Goloka Vrindavan are the same, or?
Yes. Let's just say yes. You can, if you can get into some details about this, but in this context, Prabhupada is using them. What is it?
Synonymously.
Yeah. That's synonymous. Thank you. But there are, there's some in Brahma Samhita and in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita, we get some more details about some of the distinctions. Dwarka is there, and sometimes, Goloka is considered not just Vrindavan, but so it's just. But for our purposes, for this class, And what Prabhupada is saying here, it's synonymous.
Thank you.
Mhm. Other questions or comments? Okay. So yes.
So Prabhu, in essence, in this from this paragraph, can we come to a conclusion that devotional service is beyond these 5 liberations, or that fifth point, which is about to have constant association with the Lord, is that in equality to what we talk about devotional
The four of the 5 liberations are only achieved through bhakti. So they're not separate from bhakti. They're just for a, and maybe they, for example, in other sampradayas, there may be a very strong desire to have that. In our following the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya, Mama Jamani Jamani Ishwari Bhavatat Bhakti Rahaitu Ki Tvai. I just want your devotional service.
Yeah.
And that is the purest.
Yeah.
And so it's going to take some work for us to get there.
Yeah, yeah. Because in any of these things, barring the first one, there is still that element of selfishness that, or I'm wanting something in return of my
Yes, right. And that's why I said a devotee may accept them if they come his way.
Yeah.
But it's not the focus. The focus is pleasing and doing Anukulyena Krishna Anu. Silanam Bhaktiruttamam. Yeah, but not everyone approaches Krishna with this pure. Lord Chaitanya really gave us a very high level of purity to aspire for.
Yeah. Okay.
And he gave us an easy way to achieve it by chanting his holy name. Other thoughts?
Hare Krishna.
Okay, so now, Prabhupada, the last few paragraphs, he talks about Vrindavan. Out of the many kinds of devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, okay, the one who is attracted to the original form of the Lord, Krishna in Vrindavan, is considered to be the foremost first-class devotee. So he's saying, yes, there are others like these who get these 4 liberations, right? Such a devotee is never attracted by the opulences of Vaikuntha or even Dwaraka, the royal city where Krishna ruled. The conclusion of Sri Rupa Goswami is that the devotees who are attracted by the pastimes of the Lord in Gokula or Vrindavan are the topmost devotees. Then the last paragraph, a devotee who is attracted to a particular form of the Lord does not wish to redirect his devotion to other forms. For example, Hanuman, the devotee of Lord Ramachandra, knew that there was no difference between Lord Ramachandra and Lord Narayan, and yet he still wanted to render service only unto Ramachandra. That is due to the specific attraction of a particular devotee. There are many, many forms of the Lord, but Krishna is still the original form. Though all the devotees of different forms of the Lord are in the same category, still it is said that those who are devotees of Lord Krishna are the topmost in the list of all devotees. So there are examples, for example, Murari Gupta in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, who's sometimes considered a incarnation of Hanuman. And he tried to give up his worship of Lord Ram to accept the worship of Krishna. And he just told Lord Chaitanya, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And then Lord Chaitanya, you are Hanuman. So Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhu Kapanoy Shabanadi Sudachite Kore Udoy. That relationship with Krishna is there in the heart, and we have to awaken it. So, but as we said earlier, especially Srila Jiva Goswami went to great pains to establish Krishna as the avatari, the source of the other avatars, the supreme personality of God. So here it's very sweet ending where it's talking about, okay, we talked about liberation. I'm not so interested in that anymore. We talked about the 4 kinds of liberation that devotees will accept, okay? But then we hear about Vrindavan. Bas. That's what we really want. Okay, so other questions, comments? Yes. Okay, well, then, 1 second. We could take a look at the just give me a second here to look at my notes. Oh, well, we'll do chapter 4, the worksheets next week, because I thought I had done a really good job. I was so proud of myself that I had prepared, but I see that I missed one section of it. So we'll do it next week. So questions or comments? This is a short chapter, but if you have anything you'd like to discuss, please let me know. Speak up now. Otherwise, we can end a few minutes early, which is no problem. You can all chant extra japa.
Hare Krishna.
And, yes.
Will the swarup of the jiva changes? Like if a jiva is serving in Vaikuntha Loka, Vishnu, Lord Vishnu or Lord Ramchandra, and if they're attached to such a form of a Vishnu like Narasimhadev, and do they change their interest to serve Krishna? Is it like is it possible or is it eternal?
Well, the first thing to know is that they're not unhappy. They're not saying, oh, too bad. You know, I got stuck with Lord Narayan and I didn't get Krishna. You know, they're fully satisfied. They don't think like, they're fully satisfied. Now, having said that, the only thing I can do is repeat what Srila Prabhupada said, which I read a few minutes ago, if I can find it now. Where was that? Oh, yes. In other words, those who are already promoted to the Vaikuntha planets and who possess the 4 kinds of liberation may also sometimes develop affection for Krishna and become promoted to Krishna Loka. So you would think that that usually happens by association. So what happens? Does a Brijvasi, go incognito into Vaikuntha and infiltrate it and start, giving Bhagavatam classes on the comparison? It's hard to say. Lord Chaitanya did enter, as we were talking earlier, that conversation in South India with the Tattvavadis, who are devotees. And then the whole beautiful comparison between Narayan and Krishna. So I think I would answer that simply that everyone has a personal relationship with Krishna or his incarnations. And it's really between Krishna and that jiva. But I do want to say that nobody, it's not getting the short straw, so to speak, or, getting a bad deal to end up in Vaikuntha. It's glorious. And at the same time, as followers of Lord Chaitanya, we basically attract a liberation, in quotes, of either a cowherd boy or a cook, generally. I hope that's...
So in continuation with this, here in the reference, we have 4 types of liberation, and we may be promoted to the Krishna Loka. It is there. So related to this, how to understand, Prabhu?
I don't think I understand the question. There's the 4 kinds of liberation that are mentioned.
Yeah,
but
the other 4 liberations, although not desired by devotees, are still not against the devotional ideals. Some of the liberated persons who have achieved these 4 stages of liberation may also develop affection for Krishna and be promoted to the Goloka. Vrindavana planet in the spiritual sky. In other words, those who are already promoted to Vaikuntha planets and who possess the four kinds of liberation may also sometimes develop affection for Krishna and become promoted to Krishna Loka. So
Right.
this is.
So what's the question?
So will the devotees sometime who is serving Lord in Vaikuntha, they get desire to serve Krishna and they feel that they want to go to Krishna? Will they?
Well, as you can see, Prabhupada doesn't go into those kind of details in this verse, or rather in this chapter. So I can't really say much beyond what he writes. Generally speaking, to be in Vrindavan, one needs the association of someone who already has Braja Bhakti. So whether they got that association when they were still here, so, you know, or like I said, maybe some of the Brijvasis go to Vaikuntha and start doing book distribution. I'm not being serious now, but usually the idea is that it's through association. So maybe Varada Krishna Prabhu has a clear answer to this, but that I don't want to really go on too much beyond what Prabhupada says in the purport. Varada Krishna Prabhu?
I tend to agree completely with you, because this is the realm of this question has got well and beyond, I would say, all stages of sadhana bhakti, all stages of sadhana bhakti. So it's, I guess, Prabhupada would sometimes say, you cross the bridge when you come to it, so you handle
Nice.
it.
Yes.
Because honestly, it's a bit like this. Why did we fall down? Question. Why did we fall down from the Krishna Loka question?
Yeah.
So I
go ahead.
restrict myself to repeating what Prabhupada said, because see, there has to be some external trigger to be able to think or go from one of those planets to another one. So where and how does that external trigger come? Your guru is not, your guru is also as satisfied as you are that you're dedicated yourself to the lotus feet of one of the forms of the Lord. So I guess the focus is on to become more intense. And since if that is at all possible in the spiritual world, if these terms are used in, I don't even know if we can use these terms in the spiritual world. We have to become more focused, more intense. So where is the external trigger to change your status quo coming from? I can't comprehend. So I guess we have to, one of us has to go there and come back or something.
Yeah, so we can be merciful to our Sri Vaishnava friends and tell them something about Krishna, so that maybe they have that seed. If they go to Vaikuntha, they may still have that seed. Oh, when I met that follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, maybe that's the kind of person who can continue on. I don't know. But yes, we don't want to speculate too much beyond what we don't want to speculate beyond what Prabhupada is saying. Very good point. Other questions or comments?
Prabhu, I have a question. What do we mean by saying that the Dhamma of the Lord appears in the material world? What do we mean?
basically mean that.
Because you've lived for many years in Vrindavan. What is it? I mean, what is our contemplation when we live in Vrindavan, etc.?
It is the spiritual world having descended into this world. And it's, of course, especially special because Krishna did his pastimes there. Just like, the devotees were very keen to get the place in Delhi where Prabhupada was, and in Kolkata, and to preserve the places that he visited in the West, and like that, because what is that? Tirta Tirvanti Kurvani. Yeah, that the Prabhupada is like, he was also making places, mundane places, a place of pilgrimage. So yeah, and Prabhupada even writes that even a non-devotee will feel some separation from Krishna when he visits Vrindavan, Mathura. So and it's not easy to understand the three inconceivable things, Guru Tattva, Dham Tattva, and what's the third one? Lord Shiva Tattva, or Rudra Tattva. So it's not easy because it seems like it's just another mundane place. I mean, from a mundane point of view. But if one can, and this is especially a challenge now, if you go to Vrindavan, there's so much commercialism, traffic jams, high-rise apartments, right? It's not what it used to be when I first moved there in the late 80s. But if you scratch the surface, and if you can focus on not seeing Vrindavan through the Shastra and through the pastimes of Krishna rather than what our eyes are seeing, then you actually feel, wow, you really do feel that separation from Krishna. You feel Krishna's presence. It's very, very powerful. It's very, very powerful. But one does have to train the mind to see beyond what what's literally in front of our eyes, or to, when you go to the Dham, to make a plan to associate with those who can help instill that vision in us. So, we don't want to just go to the Dham, Mayapur, Vrindavan, Puri, etc., just like spiritual vacation. That's one level, but actually to enter deeply into and experience Krishna, that's a much higher level. Is that all right?
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. It helps.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? So the next week, we are studying the purity of devotional service. And there's some very important philosophical points here. So please read that and do the short homework assignments. And we will give you back 6 minutes of your day.
Thank you.
One round of japa. Okay, thank you very much. Vanchakalpa Tarubhya Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you.